Mr. Deputy Chairman, sir, I'm extremely grateful to a very large number of honourable members who have participated in this debate, which was initiated by Shri Arun Sharma. And prior to my responding to the debate, just now concluded with the great wisdom and precision of my old friend Jairam Ramesh. Jairam was reminding me of the precedents of obstructionism. But let me tell him that eventually building a consensus on issues like GST, because that's the precise example that he gave, requires a great deal of negotiation with the states. You have to be fair to the states in terms of your political dealings with the states. You have to be fair to the states in your financial dealings with the states, that is the center-state financial relationship. And on an issue like GST, repeatedly with the empowered committee, the negotiations which we've had as to whether alcohol is to be kept out, because if I had insisted on bringing alcohol in, it would have been a deal breaker. If petroleum products were also kept out, then GST itself may lose its meaning. So constitutionally, we intend to bring it in. But it will be charged only when the states agree to it. That is when the GST Council agrees to it. There are states which may lose in terms of octroi. There are states which may lose in terms of being a manufacturing state, because GST is a tax which is charged at the destination. And therefore, comfort level in terms of some initial adjustments has to be done by the states. I have not the least doubt that GST is not a party adversarial issue. GST issue has been an issue between the central government and the state governments. In fact, when I assumed office, the opposition to some of the suggestions came from state governments of my own party. And therefore, I had to satisfy my own party's state governments, because they were intending to protect the rights of the states as much as it came from any other party. It's only when we've given them a comfort level that most of the states have now come on board. But since, but I would only urge him, obstructionism can be a temporary tactic. At times it can be a strategy. It can't be a long-term ideology. And therefore, some of the reforms which the UPA government started and which we are taking a shade forward should be cooperated with rather than being obstructed in one manner or the other, or even delayed. And I say this for a reason, that this is a historic opportunity for India. There have been years when we've grown at a very fast pace. I am one of those who've consistently believed that the post-1991 era, and what started in 1991, the then Finance Minister, our former Prime Minister, is here, was a defining moment for this country. And that's a path which we have to slowly but surely proceed on. If we deviate from it, it's not a path by which we are going to gain. And let me just give an illustration. My friend P. Rajiv yesterday mentioned, and it's not a move that I have started, the UPA continued that, it's been there from times immemorial. He argued very strongly that governments are giving 75,000 crores as tax concessions to the diamond industry. Now, what is this tax concession to the diamond industry? There is not a rupee of any concession that I have given which UPA had not given, or which the United Front government which you supported had not given. There is no diamond produced in this country. It only comes for polishing and cutting and for finishing. Within a few days, it goes back. Lakhs and lakhs of jobs are created just in the polishing and finishing industry. Now, that temporary import which takes place, it doesn't only take place for diamonds. So if there is Commonwealth Games or a cricket series, the cameras and the shooting crew which also comes is a temporary import. You don't charge them duty for that temporary import because it is meant to go back. Otherwise, you will be adding to those costs. You start charging them duty, lakhs and lakhs of people who've got jobs in that process will come to an end. We use only that for job creation in India. Now, if you want, your second point, you read out a list of countries which are having 55% corporate tax. Well, 1991 started a process of rationalizing and bringing taxations down. I have no hesitation in admitting that lower rates of taxes leads to better compliance, it leads to more employment, it leads to a more efficient economy, it leads to more jobs, it leads to larger revenue. Your formulation which you have suggested is a formulation which has not been accepted, at least now world over. Amongst the principal questions, and I'm thankful, sincerely thankful to my friend Mr. Jairam Ramesh for partly answering that question, though I'd like to clarify the facts because he asked me for some statistical data. The principal criticism is that have you in some sectors reduced the spending? Well, this budget comes at a very crucial time where global economy is facing a challenge. We are certainly recovering. That recovery should be faster than what it's actually happening. Our growth rates are moving upwards. And let me tell you, the CSO is a credible organization. The CSO is not an organization which either the UPA government can control or the NDA government can control. They do their independent exercises. Even prime ministers come to know of figures, or finance ministers come to know of figures just when they are released. They don't even consult us on the figures. We make our own estimations, they make their own estimations. They didn't release the data immediately, the basis of the change of the GDP figures when they changed the base year. They've included various sectors, they've included more companies. They believe that their formulations are now more internationally compatible. So they did not only change the basis for 2014-15, they changed it from 2011-12 onwards. So the last year of the UPA, which was left at 4.7, suddenly became 6 point something, 6.9. And therefore, it's not a UPA, India's growth rate is not a UPA-NDA issue. It's across the board that they altered the figures and they believe that their figures are internationally compatible. Some people comment that you are not getting a feel of those figures. But then as the debate goes on in academics, I think it will always improve. And our understanding will become better. Our fiscal deficit is broadly under control. Our current account deficit is completely under control. Inflation is under control. Foreign exchange reserves are very high. Rupee is one of the few currencies in the world which is able to keep pace with the dollar. The US economy is doing well. The dollar is becoming very strong. As against most other currencies in the world, the rupee is gaining. As against dollar, it's trying to, at times struggling to keep pace with the dollar. The second important change is that the financial architecture between the center and the states has completely been changed by the 14th Finance Commission. earlier, the states were getting 32% of the central divisible pool. That is a central pool of taxes. It goes up to 42. It actually goes up slightly higher with the 14th Finance Commission, because they'll get for municipalities, they'll get for panchayats, they'll also get for disaster relief, the subject we discussed for agriculture today morning. And this figure may be 47 plus actually. The states will get their own taxes. One calculation is amongst the total basket of taxes in the country, center and states, the states now get 62%. So the states' pockets have much more money. And when Jairam says that quantitatively, what is the difference? Is there a difference? Quantitatively, the divisible pool gain between last year and the next year, that is the current year and the next year, is going to be 1,86,000 crores to states collectively. The grants are also going to increase by 24,190. With this gain, obviously the money in the pocket of the center is going to go down both quantitatively as also in terms of percentage. Therefore, logically, it should be less in every area. The Finance Commission in paragraph 7.4.3 says, it indicates that a number of these schemes will be transferred wholly to the states. So obviously, when I transfer those schemes to the states, that part of the funding expenditure in center will be less. But we decided not to transfer all of them. 23 schemes, centrally sponsored schemes, will remain wholly with the center. 13 will be between partly with the center and partly with the states, and 8 schemes go entirely to the states. Now, there are 2 errors, or 2 corrections, I'm sorry for using the word error, 2 corrections which are required in these calculations which we are making. Back of the envelope calculations can occasionally be misleading. They may be based on common sense, but a deeper analysis may reveal something more. And that change is the money in the central government's pocket has gone down.
Excuse me, can I just seek a clarification now or later?
You can seek it now.
Because yesterday also I mentioned that it is not true. The central share remains unchanged at 38. What has happened, I'm just repeating that and reminding you that last year the central assistance to states was 42%. Last year, 2014-15. And the devolution of state share of taxes was roughly 49%. After the 14th Finance Commission, the devolution of state share of taxes is 62-63%. And that what you were referring to as grant and loans, 24,000 some crore rupees. Yes, that is where from 9% of 2014-15, you have increased it to 13%. So total becomes 14 plus 4, 18%. Central assistance to states in your budget of 2014-15 was 42%. Now central assistance to states has been brought down to 24%. So it's exactly 18-18 shift. So it's not true. But I think on the contrary, those are the untied funds. May
I just translate these percentages to avoid any confusion into numbers, and then I'll give you the state-wise analysis. 1,86,000 crore is extra because of the divisible pool, states collectively. 24,190 because of grants. As a result of some schemes shifting to the states or partly shifting to the states, the reduction would be 75,000. And therefore, the states will get 1,35,000 crore net extra. And now, let me give you how it will impact. Because if the impact was otherwise, that they get nothing more, if they get nothing more, Not one state is saying, I'd like to go back to 13th Finance Commission. Now, this figure that I have, I made a chart for every state, and I'll just give you a few illustrative states. And I'll particularly give you the figures of some crucial states. And from this figure, you will have to subtract the reduction of the schemes which have gone to the states. The divided new state of Andhra Pradesh was getting 15,720. Next year, it will get 30,530. Uttar Pradesh, from 73,868, will get 26,000 crores more, 99,159. Now, from this figure, ये जो 26,000 का थोड़ा कम होगा क्योंकि सेंट्रल स्कीम जो ट्रांसफर हुई उसके योगदान कम होगा. अब वेस्ट बंगाल 27,962 will become 49,079. अब बिहार का 40,803 will become 53,273. Sir, I can give each figure to the states, but I am only indicating not a single state is going to get less, and not a single chief minister has said, I was better off than the 13th Finance Commission.
So, Mr. Deputy Chairperson, you should be allowed to complete this speech.
You should not reel. You should not reel.
Sir.
No.
Sir.
And Sharma ji.
Sir, once...
You can speak only if he yields.
The first fact to be understood is, and that's the correction which is required for a proper understanding, the correction which is required is, money in those sectors is not going to go down. I am one of those who firmly believes that most of our states are responsible at spending. So when this money is going to the states have a fiscal deficit which is better than the center's fiscal deficits. राज्यों का fiscal deficit collectively केंद्र से बेहतर है. राज्य भी चुने हुए हैं. It's a shared sovereignty between the center and the states. So if UP will get 26,000 crores more, I have to start with an assumption that UP or Bengal, the chief ministers are also responsible to their people and therefore will spend this in various sectors. Now the answer to Mr. Jairam Ramesh's question is, the best guarantee is when I say I will give 75% for the central scheme, the state will give 25%. Which state is going to come up and say, I don't want this scheme, I am not willing to spend 25%? Is there a single state which will say कि मुझे 75% नहीं चाहिए, मुझे ये scheme नहीं चाहिए क्योंकि मुझे 25% देना पड़ेगा? Obviously, the money will go when the states will take out their 25%. So the schemes are going to go 75-25 or 50-50. So only 13 schemes. The rest 23 schemes we will fund fully. अब उन 13 schemes का या जो 8 states को transfer की, अगर उस list में center के खाते में वो पैसा कम होगा, तो राज्यों के खाते में ज्यादा होगा. और इसलिए उस सेक्टर के अंदर, चाहे वो SC/ST है, चाहे वो चाइल्ड विभाग है, विमेंस विभाग है, उस सेक्टर में पैसा ज्यादा होगा. I may have become poorer by this 10% less in my pocket, but the country has not become poorer, the country has become richer because the states and I are both going to spend. So bulk of the speeches and the points made, has spending in these sectors come down? The answer is it won't come down because the country as a whole is going to spend much more in these sectors. The second error which we make while calculating this is, and that is a correction which is required, and I request Mr. Anand Sharma in the data that he was giving to make this correction.
No, this is your government's data. Then you should correct your budget.
Please listen to my response. Please listen to my response. In any of the years, an erroneous comparison we can make in the next year is by comparing the figures of allocation not with the revised estimates, but with the budget estimates. And this is a challenge which India has faced in the last 3 years. I have faced it in the current year. Your finance ministers have faced it in the last 2 years particularly. If there is 2 years ago a difference between budgeted estimate and revised estimate of 1,20,000 crore, you compare, even when I was 10% less this year, you compare the revised estimates of 2014-15, which I have tried to provide in this year's budget, compare revised to what I am providing, because I do believe that it's not only fiscal deficit which is important, which is also the quality of fiscal deficit which is important. Just postponing tax refunds, just postponing subsidy payments. For instance, where was the CST compensation promised by the UPA ever shown in your fiscal deficit figures? I am having to pay that money now. So what is relevant is not fiscal deficit and that numerical, but the quality of that fiscal deficit, which should be independent of any hidden fiscal deficit. And therefore, we try and cover it up next year by saying we will spend less. Partly because of the legacy issues, I have had to face that challenge. But we are now trying to correct that course. And when you compare my budgeted figures with the revised estimates of actual spending, my budgeted figures are much more than what the UPA had in its last year and equal to what I had in my first year. And therefore, the two impressions should be corrected. Part of the schemes being transferred to the schemes doesn't mean the center has become indifferent because the states have got more. They have to spend out of these. They'll spend for development, they'll spend for infrastructure, they'll spend for various social schemes itself. So having said this, this whole debate, I think, of pro-corporate, pro-rich, pro-poor, India has to decide whether it is going to get caught in slogans or whether it is going to get into substance. And this criticism is not new. Dr. Saab is sitting here, probably far more experienced than any one of us. When he started this process, he faced much greater criticism than what some of us have faced. But over the last 3 decades, our understanding of the issue has to increase. These are challenges in the economy unless the economy grows at a faster pace. And the Indian normal has to be 8%, 9%, targeting a double-digit growth. The Indian normal can't be 4%, 5% growth. On that kind of growth, we'll barely be able to pay salaries and undertake essential expenditure. Mr. Jairam Ramesh was right, because revenue expenditures can't be reduced. You'll have to pay salaries. You'll have to pay pensions. You'll have to pay for the defense of the country. You'll have to pay for interest on debt. These are revenue expenditures which you'll have to undertake. And therefore, unless we increase our revenues, our tax buoyancies go up because of growth rates, you won't be able to spend on development. And if you're not able to spend on development, there'll be no growth. And you won't have money to service the poor. And therefore, our effort has to be that the growth has to go up. And the additional resources which come out of that growth have to be used to service the poor of this country. That is how the poverty alleviation schemes have worked. And that's what we've tried. After all, the idea which has been appreciated by most members, 5.77 crores self-entrepreneurs with no funding. So we said the Mudra as an institution should fund the unfunded. We sanctioned money for this. Who can say this is pro-corporate? This is a step which is going to service a large section of Indian people. You also started the financial inclusion program. For you, a village was a unit. We made individual a unit. And that is why we were able to reach in a 100-day period 12.54 crore people. We didn't merely say that you must have an access to a village. We said you must access to every person. Now the next challenge is, how do you put monies on that account? You are right. We had doubts about some schemes. The doubts were clear. We adopted it. And now, monies through the earlier schemes which UPA started, the scholarships, the pensions going into these accounts. From these accounts, you'll have 1 rupee a month transferred and you get the accident insurance. Those who want 1 rupee a day transferred or less than that will get a life insurance. On a 250 rupee contribution in your service career, working career, you provide for a security where government will also make a contribution for your pension schemes. And you are absolutely right. The health issue, which is extremely important because it's very dangerous now for your own health and also for the kind of money you spend to fall ill. And therefore, the schemes which the UPA had started, plus new initiatives we intend to take, have to be holistically looked at. The weaker sections have to be provided the same support with the state support. The others will be provided support, and we've given an incentive. For instance, I have raised the ATC limits additionally by 10,000 rupees for each categories, for normal people, for senior citizens and very senior citizens, so that their treatments can be taken care of by this whole process. You incentivize in terms of tax, in terms of going in for your health insurances. The middle classes. Now, last year, for house rent repayment, for house interest repayment, for ATC payments, we increased even the limit from 2 lakhs to 2.5 lakhs, and we gave an additional benefit of 1 lakh, 50,000 each. This year, I doubled the conveyance exemption. I have provided additionally for medical, plus another 50,000 in the category of contributions made to the National Pension Scheme. And the National Pension Scheme is giving you a return of almost 11% today. So all those who are in trade, business, professionals, shopkeepers, if they take those incentives now and you get a tax benefit and you are incentivized to invest in pension, the whole idea of social security is to convert India from a pension-less society into a pensioned society. Now, these are important social sector initiatives we've taken in the budget. The whole system that we are trying to devise, where governments give up their discretionary powers. So every law, the public procurement, there was some talk during UPA of bringing that bill. We've implemented it partly. Our coal block legislation, which is coming up today, our mining legislation, which is coming up today, just see the effect. I said in the other house, and I don't mind saying it here, it was Dr. Manmohan Singh who within 2 months of taking over as Prime Minister said coal blocks should be auctioned. His letters to his communication minister in November and December 2007 clearly indicate that he was uncomfortable with the discretions being exercised and the way they were being exercised. But till 2014, you were not able to put this policy into action. You did it in the 3G auctions. Now that the whole law is being smoothened out, we are trying to get rid of those discretions. At least the success of the coal block auction, you and convince the whole country, and to go by Jairam Ramesh's advice, Don't obstruct when your own policies are being implemented by others. Please rethink your strategy for the day. And therefore, please rethink your strategy for the day. After all, what are we saying? That coal blocks by allocation. 33 coal blocks have already got us some 2,13,000 plus. Spectrum has already got us over 1 lakh of crores. And therefore, this policy has served the country well. And therefore, you'd be well advised, obstructionism transiently can be a tactic, but can't be a permanent feature. Sir,
Please.
Madam, our roadmap is very clear. We want people to invest in this country. We want Indian investors not to go out so much. It'll be a good thing if they grow and go out and invest. But I don't want them to go out and invest because India is not the best place for doing business. I want international investors to consider India as a good place of business. And therefore, every step that we are taking in this roadmap is we've eased entry of people into various sectors. We need investment. It's investment which will enable every part of the country, for us, the manufacturing sector to grow, which is slowing down. In areas, Andhra Pradesh, for instance, which has lost out on revenue and many things because of the division, we stand by every word that has been committed to them.
Now, please. He is not yielding.
Sir, the Reorganization Act.
No, sit down. Sit down.
Sir, the Reorganization Act and the Finance Commission have provided a particular roadmap. When Mr. Salem says how much money and what money, you made a promise, an empty promise, but did not give any money. History has given us an opportunity.
No, please. You listen. Baba, you listen. Seelam, you listen. Sit down, sit down. Please. Sit down.
Sir, I do believe
Please.
the Prime Minister has repeatedly said that the eastern part of the country needs to be encouraged. And therefore, one of our great interests is that this entire revenue coming from... Sir,
Eastern part.
and that is why we decided, and it's a practice that whatever money, because there was somebody in the earlier government who thought these coal blocks and other resources were worth zero because nothing is lost. Now it appears that the CAG was being very kind when he estimated those losses. And today, each one of these rupees, it's an admitted fact, is going to go to the states. So the coal auctions, the mineral auctions is going to go to all those states, mostly located in eastern part of the country. Odisha is going to be the biggest beneficiary. Mr. Bhupinder Singh has made dozen speeches in this house saying, why doesn't this money come to us? Now that your demand is being fulfilled, and both mineral and coal, there is no state more than Odisha which is going to benefit from this. Now, all this goes to the states. What are we trying to do? If you try... शरद जी, बिहार को भी, बिहार में भी उद्योग लगे, इसलिए बिहार के बिना मांगे हुए हम लोगों ने बिहार में को भी वो एक पैकेज दिया और कम से कम आपके जो साथी सब जानते हैं कि वहां के माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी ने इसके लिए धन्यवाद भी दिया कि जो बिहार के लिए हमने वो दिया कि ताकि उद्योग बिहार में लग पाए, क्योंकि हम लोगों का भी इसमें हित है, देश का भी हित है, बिहार आगे बढ़ेगा। और मैं आपको बिहार के संबंध में बताऊं, मैंने पहले भी कहा था, मैं दोहराना चाहता हूं, जो फाइनेंस कमीशन ने लिस्ट बनाई कि कौन सी स्टेट्स हैं जो रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट है, इसमें कई स्टेट्स उस डेफिसिट में से बाहर निकली हैं। जो बड़े राज्य हैं उसमें अब केवल 3 बचे हैं, पश्चिम बंगाल, केरल और आंध्रा, क्योंकि बंटवारे के बाद। और आंध्रा को लगभग 7,000 करोड़ रुपया आने वाले वर्ष का रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट का मिलने वाला है, जो फाइनेंस कमीशन ने कहा जो उनके रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट का आंकड़ा है। केरल और बंगाल को भी, इस बंगाल को कोयले का पैसा मिलेगा, फाइनेंस कमीशन का ज्यादा डिविजिबल पूल से मिलेगा और रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट का मिलेगा, जो उनका अधिकार है। मैं नहीं कह रहा, पहले भाषण होते थे हम केंद्र इतना पैसा भेजता है, मैं तो ये मानता हूं कि क्योंकि ये शेयर्ड सॉवरेनिटी है, ये सारे टैक्सेस भी तो वहां से आते हैं, तो इसलिए राज्य को जो पैसा मिलेगा ये उनका अधिकार है। और मैं कैसे अनुमान लगा लूं कि राज्य उसका दुरुपयोग करेंगे और सही प्रयोग नहीं करेंगे। बिहार रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट में से बाहर निकला है। बिहार में उद्योग लगे, उसके लिए जो टैक्स कंसेशंस बिहार को दिए जा सकते हैं वो मैंने बजट में घोषणा की, जिसके लिए माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी ने सार्वजनिक बयान भी दिया है। हम केवल इतना कि इस देश में व्यवसाय करना हम सरल कर दें। So I must confess that people have been meeting me as they must have been meeting senior leaders of the earlier government. One of them asked me a question, I'll just indicate. Can we trust a decision making in your system where it takes you 10 years to decide what your policy on insurance is? We may all be partly guilty of the honest reply. How can we trust the tax system of your country if you tax retrospectively? How do we, and a criticism has been made, and let me answer it straight away. I said from next year onwards, what is our corporate tax structure? We charge 30% as tax, cess surcharge, it comes to about 34%. This 34%, domestic investors also, not only foreign investors, domestic investors are also looking at your tax structure, is this very high? I gave in the other house the figures of the table that they look at competing economy. Because we are in competition, please invest in my country. Today, Asia's average is 21.91. Europe is 19.68. Global is 23. Now, do I have to compete in this, or do I say I will charge you much more and go by P. Rajiv's advice that make it 55%? So that even direct tax, I think, Rajiv, you should seriously reconsider it. Advising me to raise direct taxes on individual assessees may be anti-people, to use the Marxian phrase. Well, I don't intend doing that. In the last 2 years, to the individual assessees, we have given a lot of exemptions, and we want more money in the pocket so that people can spend more and even save more. That's how the economy will grow. Now, I was surprised when I read a opinion piece by my predecessor, who normally has been kinder to me than to his own predecessor, saying that you will lose so much. And then suddenly I realized that this whole idea of bringing down 30% to 25% and phasing out all the exemptions, with exemptions, the actual rate of collection is only 23%. So I have an image of 30 plus 4, 34%. My actual collection is only 23%. So a better common sense is that I make it 25% and do away with as many exemptions possible. The UPA's own direct tax code, placed in this House in August 2009 by Honorable Shri Pranab Mukherjee, the then Finance Minister, now the Honorable President, itself says the proposal is corporate tax rate 25%. And this document was actually prepared during my predecessor's regime in the Finance Ministry. Though Mr. Mukherjee had the distinction of placing it before the House. So the proposal of the UPA, when I adopt it, merely because you happen to be sitting on the other side, it becomes pro-corporate, so pro-rich. I would only urge, sir, we need competitive interest rates, we need competitive tax rates, we need stability in those taxation rates, we need a system free from corruption. How has the world reacted to us when they invested in the telecom sector, never got their monies back, and the licenses got cancelled? I think it's a low point for Indian investment that global investors investing in India lost the license because of corruption charges in India, and they never got their money back. Who would trust such an economy? And therefore, transparency is needed in these matters, and that's what we are, through this auction process, we are trying to bring about. And I don't seriously think anybody can contest that transparency principle. A comment was made, you have done away with wealth tax. Total collection 900 crores, 1,000 crores. Everybody is filing returns. Cost of collection very high. I abolished it and replaced it by a 2% surcharge on the super rich. Instead of 1,000 crores I lost, from those super rich, I am getting 9,000 crores more. So you are only worried about continuing that 1,000, which was leading to all kinds of malpractices, properties being undervalued, jewelry being undervalued across the country, non-productive assets being undervalued, and a harassment involved in the whole process. So simplification of tax structures, what was required. I have corrected inverted duties and high duties in about 22 items to add to the Make in India campaign. Sir, I won't elaborate on the black money steps that I have taken, but I wish to assure the members that in the law that the Cabinet has approved, which we intend introducing, we are going to make sure that there is no scope for misuse, but at the same time, there is a deterrent for those who stock money abroad. This law only deals with undisclosed foreign assets. And therefore, those who continue to retain undisclosed foreign assets will have to, there are separate steps in the budget which I have announced as far as that is concerned. Sir, the fiscal consolidation path, we were to reach 3% within 2 years. It is my regret that I am going to take 1 year more, but the reason for taking that 1 year extra is sharing a lot more resources with the state, the burden of the 7th pay commission which is likely to come. Because of the slowdown in various sectors, I had to spend more on infrastructure. So this gave me a sufficient fiscal space to fund infrastructure and from the general budgetary support, rupees 70,000 crores more. We have mentioned various methods of funding infrastructure. Of course, public investment in infrastructure being one of them, tax-free bonds, India Infrastructure Investment Fund, in which the government and PSUs are going to contribute 20,000, and we are trying to get sovereign and pension funds internationally. The LIC recently has had an arrangement with the Indian Railways that they've kept 1,50,000 crores in readiness for investing in the railway infrastructure. The gold monetization scheme, the whole object is that an idle asset should now be used productively for national as a resource. That's the whole intention. On agriculture, sir, there are several steps that I have announced. 25,000 crores more on rural infrastructure, 15,000 crores more on long-term rural credit, 15,000 crores more on short-term capital, 8.5 lakh crores through the NABARD funding on the agricultural credit. Manrega, where lots of speeches have been made in the last 9 months that you have reduced it. I not only maintained the spending at 34,000 crores, in one of my paragraphs, I have, in the course of budget preparation, found some additional resource, so I am adding another 5,000 to it. So it will eventually go to 39,000. And the reason is not that I am competing with you, that the rise in rural wages is slowing down. The increase in rural wages is a slow increase, so we want to put more money into the rural sector as in terms of wages, and therefore we've taken that step. So there were several other questions raised, but I'm sure members responding from the treasury benches have also answered them. My only appeal is, there could be ideological differences on some issues, but on one issue, that India must grow and the benefit of growth must be transferred to the poor. Therefore, we need a larger consensus on the growth roadmap. And therefore, I think it is about time that democracy brings maturity in politics. And therefore, after I can hear Renukaji very loud and clear. Obstructionism can have a sadistic thrill, but that can be only temporary. And therefore, my appeal to all members of the House would be to kindly support the steps that we have taken in this budget. With these few words, sir, I commend the proposals for approval.